Eleanor Brown's small house stood by the shores of Peacock Lake, where the morning sun sparkled on the water. It had white exterior walls with blue shutters, and colorful flowers bloomed in the front yard. Eleanor never missed tending to her garden each morning. "Catherine, you would have loved this hibiscus," Eleanor said as she watered the red hibiscus flower, speaking to her departed daughter. The Florida morning air was already humid, with sweat beading at Eleanor's white hairline. Since losing her 35-year-old daughter 2 years ago, her days had been filled with quiet conversations and memories. Back in the kitchen, she noticed the photograph on the refrigerator door. It showed Catherine, Noah, and Michael laughing on a beach. Eleanor herself had taken the picture during their trip to the Florida Keys to celebrate her daughter's 5th wedding anniversary. "We didn't know anything back then," Eleanor whispered. Taking a sip of coffee, she looked out the window. Peacock Lake reflected the morning light peacefully, and she could see small figures of people enjoying early morning fishing on the opposite shore. After working as a nurse for 40 years, now in retirement, Eleanor was trying to find peace in this quiet lakeside life. However, questions about her daughter's death constantly swirled in the depths of her heart. The telephone rang, pulling Eleanor from her thoughts. "Good morning, Eleanor. It's volunteer day. Haven't forgotten, have you?" Martha Johnson's strong voice resonated from the other end of the line. Martha was a friend who volunteered with Eleanor at the local community center and had lost her husband 10 years ago. Perhaps due to her background as a former police officer, her voice always carried decisiveness and confidence. "Yes, I remember. I'm getting ready now," Eleanor answered. "Then I'll pick you up in an hour." "Oh, about Catherine's accident report, I asked someone I know about it." Eleanor's hand paused for a moment. "Did you find anything?" "I can't say for certain yet. Eleanor, there are unnatural aspects to that accident. There are parts where Michael's testimony doesn't match the scene. It's just my instinct, but it might not have been an accident." Eleanor took a deep breath. "I understand. Tell me more about it later." After hanging up, Eleanor stared at her daughter's photograph. Catherine had soft brown hair like her mother and a gentle smile. But in the last few months, that smile had never been free of shadows. In Eleanor's mind, her final conversation with her daughter resurfaced. Catherine had been troubled about her relationship with her husband, Michael. "Michael has become really short-tempered lately," her daughter had confided. "Whenever something happens, he even lashes out at Noah. It seems like he's having some financial problems." A week later, Eleanor received a call from the police saying that Catherine had died after falling down the stairs at home. According to Michael's explanation, she had slipped while going downstairs for water in the middle of the night. At the time, Eleanor had been too shocked to pursue the details. Then, immediately after the funeral, Michael suddenly moved away with Noah. "We need a fresh start in a new environment," he had said. Even when Eleanor asked to see her grandson, she was only told, "Please wait until Noah settles down." Eventually, contact from Michael ceased, and Eleanor felt as though she had lost not only her beloved daughter but also her precious grandson. Eleanor took a white blouse from her wardrobe and began changing. Volunteer work always lightened her heart a little. When she read books to children, she sometimes had the illusion that she was reading to her grandson Noah. The doorbell rang, and Eleanor checked the clock. It wasn't time for Martha to arrive yet. When she opened the door, the mail carrier was holding a small package. Registered mail for Ms. Eleanor Brown. After signing for and receiving the package, Eleanor caught her breath at the sender's name. It was from Michael Daniels. Returning to the living room, she opened the seal with trembling hands, and a letter and photograph fell out. The photograph appeared to be recently taken, showing a slightly grown Noah. However, his once lively smile was gone, and his expression seemed somehow rigid. Opening the letter, she found a short message written in Michael's meticulous handwriting. "Eleanor, I apologize for contacting you after so long. Noah has been talking about his grandmother a lot lately. I would like him to see you. Could we visit with Noah next Saturday? I await your reply. Michael. Eleanor clutched the letter to her chest. She could see her grandson after 2 years. Along with joy, an uneasy premonition crossed her heart. Martha's words floated into her mind. There are unnatural aspects to that accident. The phone rang, and recognizing it was from Martha, Eleanor quickly answered. Martha, you called at just the right time. I heard from Michael. He's coming next week with Noah. On the other end of the phone, the sound of Martha's breath catching was audible. Eleanor, be careful. I don't trust that man. Especially now, when we've just started investigating the old accident. I know. But I want to see Noah. And I think something's wrong. I saw a photo of Noah, and something's different. He doesn't seem like that energetic child he used to be. I understand. But it's dangerous to meet him alone. I'll be there with you. Eleanor looked out the window. The morning sun danced on the lake's surface, announcing the start of a new day. In her heart, she had made a decision. Meet her grandson, uncover the truth. Know the real circumstances of her daughter's death. And above all, protect Noah. Thank you, Martha. Now, let's go. And I need to prepare Noah's room. Eleanor stood up and headed to the guest room upstairs. She dusted, laid fresh sheets, and arranged stuffed animals that Noah used to like on the shelf. Then, she placed colored pencils and a sketchbook on the small desk by the window. I'll be waiting for you, Noah. Grandma's here for you, she whispered softly. Saturday morning, Eleanor checked the clock repeatedly. Michael had said he would arrive at 10. At 9:55, looking out from the living room window, she saw an unfamiliar black SUV parked at the curb. Her heart began to race. The doorbell rang, and after taking a deep breath, she opened the door to find Michael Daniel standing there. He was thinner than before, with harder features. The gentle expression of her former son-in-law had disappeared, replaced by a somewhat sharp impression. It's been a while, Eleanor. Michael's voice had an artificial brightness to it. A small shadow was visible behind him. Tears welled up in Eleanor's eyes. Noah. Her 5-year-old grandson had grown taller since she'd last seen him, but he was much thinner. His large brown eyes, so like Catherine's, remained fixed on the floor, unwilling to look up. Aren't you happy to see your grandmother, Noah? Michael gently pushed his grandson's shoulder. Noah merely nodded slightly, still not making eye contact. Please, come in, Eleanor welcomed them. I've prepared tea and cookies. Noah, they're your favorite chocolate chip. Entering the living room, Michael immediately sat down on the sofa, showing a relaxed demeanor. In contrast, Noah remained standing in the corner of the room, motionless. Come, Noah. Sit next to Grandma, Eleanor gently extended her hand. Noah glanced briefly at his father before slowly sitting next to Eleanor. However, his body remained stiff and tense. How have you been? Is school fun? Eleanor spoke to her grandson. There was no answer. Michael answered instead. Noah started at a new school last month. He's still not used to it. Also, he hasn't spoken much since his mother's death. Eleanor frowned. The previous Noah had been active and loved to talk. So, Eleanor, Michael changed the subject. I've started a new life too. I met a woman named Jessica, and I'm thinking about remarrying. I see. Eleanor replied, hiding her surprise. Well, congratulations. She likes Noah too. I think she'll be a good mother. Eleanor looked for Noah's reaction, but his expression didn't change. Only his small hand seemed to be trembling. Noah, I've prepared a room for you upstairs. Would you like to see it? Eleanor stood up. Michael, would you mind if I spend some time alone with my grandson? I'll come along, Michael promptly stood up. Noah is afraid of being alone in unfamiliar places. Eleanor wanted to object but nodded silently for Noah's sake. Entering the upstairs room, Noah's eyes lit up slightly. He had spotted the stuffed animals Eleanor had prepared. Especially when he saw the light blue rabbit stuffed animal, his favorite since he was a baby, he smiled faintly. You still had that, Michael's voice carried a hint of irritation. Noah, aren't you too old for such toys? Noah's shoulders trembled slightly, and he quickly withdrew his hand. Eleanor's heart ached. Lunch is ready. Let's go downstairs, Eleanor said, avoiding Michael's gaze. During the meal, Eleanor continued to talk to Noah, but he only answered with yes or no, or simply nodded. Michael enthusiastically talked about his new job and plans with Jessica. Noah, shall I fix that button on your shirt? Eleanor asked when she noticed it. When she reached toward Noah's arm, the boy pulled away. At that moment, his sleeve rolled up, revealing a large bruise on his upper arm. What's this? Eleanor exclaimed involuntarily. Michael quickly pulled Noah's arm and rolled the sleeve down. He fell while playing in the park. Kids get hurt often, don't they? But this shape is... Eleanor, Michael's voice sharpened. I don't intend to be lectured about parenting methods. A sudden silence filled the room. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, Eleanor apologized. Inside, warning bells were ringing. After lunch, Michael's cell phone rang. I need to take this. It's an important call. He went out to the terrace. Eleanor seized the opportunity and sat next to Noah. Noah, are you okay? If there's anything you want to say, tell Grandma, she took her grandson's small hand. Noah looked into Eleanor's eyes for the first time. Fear and sadness that couldn't be put into words dwelled in those eyes. His lips trembled, and just as he was about to say something, the terrace door opened. Michael returned. His expression was clearly disturbed. I'm sorry, but we need to change our plans, he said. We have to go back today. What? But weren't you planning to stay overnight? Eleanor stood up in surprise. I want to spend more time with Noah. It's a work emergency, Michael answered coldly. Noah, pack your things. But just a little longer. Eleanor, Michael's voice contained a warning. I don't intend to argue further. Eleanor tried desperately to maintain her composure. I understand. But when will I see you again? I'll be in touch, Michael answered briefly. 30 minutes later, the black SUV was driving away down the road again. Eleanor stood in front of the door, pressing her trembling hands to her chest. Something's wrong, she murmured. In the evening, Martha came to check on her. Eleanor told her about every detail of the visit. You saw Noah's bruise. Martha frowned. And he decided to leave as soon as you noticed it. Eleanor nodded. It's also abnormal that Noah doesn't talk at all. He used to love chatting. Eleanor, we absolutely cannot ignore this, Martha said decisively. We need to gather evidence. That night, Eleanor went upstairs to clean the room Noah had used. The room was surprisingly orderly. The bed was perfectly made, and the toys showed no signs of having been touched. This doesn't look like a room used by a child, Eleanor murmured as she looked around. Feeling something was off, she decided to examine the room more thoroughly. Noah's room had the bed perfectly made, with the pillow placed precisely in the center. Nothing had fallen on the floor, and the books on the bookshelf were all aligned vertically. The stuffed animals showed no signs of having been moved. This is, as if no one used it, Eleanor murmured to herself. Having worked as a pediatric nurse for 35 years, she knew that it was impossible for a child's room to be this orderly. Especially for a 5-year-old boy who had spent several hours there. Did Michael make him clean up? She frowned. But why? Eleanor began to search every corner of the room. First, she opened the closet and looked inside. Nothing. She checked under the bed, but there was nothing there either. She checked behind the bookshelf, behind the curtains, everything, but found nothing. I don't even know what I'm looking for. Eleanor was about to give up when she turned her attention to the desk. The small wooden desk had colored pencils and a sketchbook placed as if no one had touched them. She tried opening the sketchbook, but all the pages were blank. Wait. Eleanor's eyes lingered on the desk drawer. Opening it, the drawer was empty, but small eraser bits were scattered on the bottom. Why only here, when every other place was so perfectly cleaned? She picked up the sketchbook again and carefully flipped through it page by page. Was there any trace of writing, any folds, any sign? But she found nothing. Strange. Not giving up, Eleanor decided to check the room in even more detail. As she felt the floor with her fingertips around the desk, she noticed something had fallen under the desk. Bending down, she reached out and found a small piece of paper. It had been crumpled and crushed. She carefully unfolded it. There, in trembling childish writing, was written, "Help me." Eleanor's heart nearly stopped. Her hands shook, almost dropping the paper. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Her years of training as a nurse were helping her now. Turning the paper over, there was more text. Jessica hits me, Daddy gets angry, I'm scared every day. Eleanor was overwhelmed with emotions. Anger, fear, guilt, and determination. With trembling hands, she took out her cell phone and called Martha. Martha, come quickly, her voice trembled. I found a message from Noah. 15 minutes later, Martha arrived at Eleanor's house. She immediately went upstairs and received the note from Eleanor. The former police officer's eyes grew increasingly stern as she read the contents of the note. This is clear evidence of abuse, Eleanor, Martha said in a severe voice. We need to act immediately. But what should we do? Tears welled up in Eleanor's eyes. I don't even know Michael's address. Is there any clue in Catherine's belongings? Letters, documents, anything? Eleanor had an idea. There are a few of Catherine's boxes left in the basement. Things Michael didn't take. The two went down to the basement and began searching through Catherine's boxes. Opening the dust-covered boxes, they found photo albums, letters, and documents. Look, this is an address book. Eleanor picked up a small leather notebook. Catherine always kept important contacts in here. The two flipped through the book and found a page labeled Michael's new address. There was an address in North Carolina written there. Durham, about 7 hours by car from here, Martha said. We have to go, Eleanor decided instantly. Wait, Eleanor, Martha grabbed her arm. Two elderly women showing up suddenly won't make Michael hand over Noah. We need legal procedures. But what happens to Noah while we're going through procedures? Eleanor's voice rose. He's in danger right now. That's why it's important to gather evidence, Martha explained calmly. I have friends who work in the police. They can help us. First, we need to investigate Michael's house and gather evidence of abuse. Eleanor took a deep breath. What Martha said made sense. Acting on emotion might make Noah's situation worse. You're right, she said quietly. But we need to act quickly. Let's leave first thing tomorrow morning, Martha suggested. In the meantime, I'll use my connections to contact the police in Durham. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. The fear-filled eyes of her young grandson were burned into her mind. The feeling of helplessness when she lost her daughter 2 years ago assailed her again. But this time was different. This time, she had the power to act. Early in the morning, Martha's car stopped in front of Eleanor's house. She had already prepared and was waiting with a small suitcase. "Ready?" Martha asked, opening the window. "Yes," Eleanor answered with a determined expression. "Whatever happens, I'll protect Noah." As the car started moving, Eleanor took out the paper with Noah's message again. The words, "Help me," written in childish letters, were etched in her heart. Catherine. She spoke to her departed daughter in her heart. "I'll protect your son. I promise." On the way to Durham, Martha was gathering information from her friend in North Carolina. Michael had moved there 6 months ago and started working at a local construction company. His engagement to a woman named Jessica Morris was also confirmed. "Jessica has a criminal record," Martha said without taking her eyes off the road. 3 years ago, she was arrested for assaulting her previous partner's child. However, she was not prosecuted due to insufficient evidence. Eleanor's chest ached. Why would Michael, with such a woman? People often find partners similar to themselves. Martha's voice was cold. "I've never trusted Michael. There are too many suspicious points about Catherine's death." A heavy doubt spread in Eleanor's chest. Was her daughter's death really an accident? Was Michael somehow involved? And if she had these suspicions, why had she let Noah go with Michael? Regret and self-blame tormented her, but now she needed to focus on rescuing Noah. Around 3 in the afternoon, they arrived in the suburbs of Durham. Michael's house was in a quiet residential area. It was a small single-story house, and the yard was not well maintained. "There it is," Martha pointed at the house. "Let's see what's going on first." The two parked their car a little distance away and began observing the house with binoculars. After a while, Noah came out into the yard alone. He was rolling a small toy car with an expressionless face. "That's him," Eleanor said excitedly. At that moment, the door of the house opened, and a young woman came out. Her blonde hair was tied back in a ponytail, and she had a stern expression. She shouted something at Noah and roughly dragged him back into the house. "That must be Jessica," Martha narrowed her eyes. "Eleanor, take pictures with your smartphone. We need evidence." Eleanor took out her smartphone with trembling hands and began photographing the scene visible from the window of the house using the zoom lens. Through the window, part of the living room was visible, and Jessica could be seen arguing with Noah. At the moment she raised her hand, Eleanor gasped involuntarily. "Did you get it?" Martha asked. "Yes," Eleanor's voice trembled with anger. "Good, now we have a reason to call the police." Martha took out her cell phone. "My friend has been in contact with the local patrol officers. They should be here soon." 10 minutes later, a police car quietly entered the street. Martha and Eleanor explained the situation to the officers and showed them the evidence photos. "The child in that house is in danger," Martha explained with the dignity of a former police officer. "We are witnesses and have evidence of abuse." The officers nodded and headed toward the house. Eleanor and Martha watched the situation with tense expressions from the car. They could see 2 officers approaching the front door of Michael's house and knocking. "Please let this go well," Eleanor prayed softly. The door opened, and a woman who appeared to be Jessica emerged. After a brief conversation, she invited the officers inside with a visibly disturbed demeanor. "They're letting them in," Martha said in a low voice. "That's a good sign." About 10 minutes later, another police car arrived, and 2 more officers entered the house. Eleanor's heart was pounding. Suddenly, she made a decision. "Martha, I'm going too." "Eleanor, it's dangerous. It's better to let the police handle." "Noah is my grandson," Eleanor's voice was filled with determination. "He'll be even more frightened if I'm not there for him." Martha looked at her friend's face and sighed. "All right. But I'll go first. The two got out of the car and slowly approached the house. As they neared the entrance, they could hear shouting from inside. It was Michael's voice. The front door was slightly open, and Martha signaled for Eleanor to stay back before knocking on the door. "Friend of the police," she said in a calm voice. The door opened, and a young female officer appeared. "You cannot come in," she said with a stern expression. "I am Eleanor Brown, Noah Daniels' grandmother," Eleanor quickly explained. "My grandson must be frightened. If I'm by his side, he'll feel safer." The female officer thought for a moment, then communicated something on her radio before nodding. "All right. But follow instructions." Entering the living room, Eleanor faced a shocking scene. Michael's face was red with anger as he shouted at an officer. Jessica was talking to another officer and appeared to be crying. And in the corner of the room, a small figure could be seen trembling. It was Noah. "Noah!" Eleanor called her grandson's name. The boy looked up, and when he saw his grandmother, light returned to his eyes. He stood up and, hesitantly, took a step toward Eleanor. "Grandma." His voice was trembling. "Eleanor." Michael turned around with a surprised expression. "What are you doing?" "I should be asking you that, Michael." Eleanor's voice was cold. "What have you done to Noah?" "Don't say anything, Noah." Michael shouted. "Mr. Daniels, please refrain from intimidating behavior," the officer said sternly. "We are currently investigating suspicions of abuse." Eleanor slowly approached Noah. "It's okay, Noah. Grandma is here for you." Noah's small body was trembling. He looked into Eleanor's eyes and, as if coming to a decision, nodded slightly. Then suddenly, he ran to her and held her tightly. "I was scared." He began crying in a small voice. "Jessica hits me. Daddy doesn't help me." While embracing Noah, Eleanor nodded to the officer. The officer quickly took notes and gave instructions to another officer. Michael was leaning against the wall, his face pale. "Noah, you promised not to say anything." "Mr. Daniels, please be quiet," the officer said sternly. "In this situation, please refrain from contact with your child." For the next hour, the police investigated the entire house, took photographs, and gathered evidence. Eleanor waited in the police vehicle with Noah. The boy gradually began to calm down and occasionally started speaking in a small voice. "Jessica hits me when she gets angry," he said in a trembling voice. "And when Daddy gets angry, he's really scary." "It's okay now, Noah," Eleanor said, stroking her grandson's hair. "No one will hurt you anymore." "Really?" Hope shone in Noah's eyes. "Really? I promise." Upon arriving at the police station, Noah was taken to another room to speak with a specialist child counselor. Eleanor waited in the waiting room with Martha. "Thank you, Martha," Eleanor took her friend's hand. "Without your help, I couldn't have saved Noah." "Don't mention it," Martha smiled. "But it's not over yet. Michael and Jessica have been arrested, but the legal procedures are just beginning." A few hours later, a detective came to see Eleanor. "Ms. Brown, I have good news and another piece of news," he said with a serious expression. "What is it?" "First, your grandson will be temporarily placed under your care. We will complete the formal procedures tomorrow." Eleanor sighed in relief. "Thank you. What's the other news?" The detective sat down and tightened his expression. Digital data was found among Michael Daniels' possessions. It contains footage of your daughter, Catherine Daniels, at the time of her death. Eleanor's blood drained from her face. "What?" "I can't give details yet." The detective carefully chose his words. "But we believe there's a high possibility her death was not an accident." We're launching a full investigation. Eleanor's world shook. She gripped Martha's hand tightly. Catherine, she murmured. Eleanor, you felt it too, didn't you? Martha said quietly. That Michael was hiding something. Eleanor nodded silently. For a long time, in the depths of her heart, she had questioned her daughter's death. However, she hadn't had the courage to face that truth. Now, that fear had become reality and lay before her. Would you like to see your grandson? The detective asked. Eleanor took a deep breath and stood up. Yes, please. Entering the next room, Noah was drawing pictures with the child counselor. When he saw Eleanor, a small smile appeared on his face. Grandma, look, he held up his drawing. There were 3 people depicted on it. It's me, Grandma, and Mommy. Tears welled up in Eleanor's eyes. It's a beautiful picture, Noah. She sat down next to her grandson and embraced his small shoulders. Are we going to your house? Noah asked. Yes, Noah, Eleanor smiled. Our home. Outside the window, rain had quietly begun to fall. A difficult path awaited them tomorrow. Legal battles, confrontation with Michael, and the most painful thing, facing the truth of her daughter's death. But tonight, she was simply grateful that Noah was safe. Is Mommy watching me? Noah suddenly asked. Eleanor looked into her grandson's eyes. Yes, I'm sure she is. Mommy is always watching over you and loving you. Small hands gripped Eleanor's hand tightly. I won't forget Mommy either. We'll cherish Mommy's memories together, Eleanor said. And in her heart, she made another vow, to reveal the truth about Catherine's death and to see justice done. 6 months later, 2.5 years after Catherine's death, Michael Daniels finally stood in court. The judge took his seat, and the time came for the verdict. I will now deliver the verdict for the defendant, Michael Daniels. The judge's voice was quiet but powerful. The jury unanimously finds the defendant guilty of the murder of Catherine Daniels. Whispers spread throughout the courtroom. Eleanor closed her eyes and took a deep breath. What was revealed during the trial was a truth more horrifying than imagined. From Michael's cell phone, footage was found showing the moment he pushed Catherine down the stairs after a heated argument. He had recorded his achievement. Further investigation revealed that he had targeted Catherine's life insurance money and, eventually, Eleanor's assets. Therefore, this court sentences the defendant, Michael Daniels, to life imprisonment. Tears streamed down Eleanor's cheeks. They were not tears of sadness but tears of relief finally obtained. Michael, in the defendant's seat, turned pale and swayed. Throughout the trial, he had maintained an appearance of calmness and arrogance, but now, that mask was falling away. His accomplice, Jessica Morris, had also been sentenced to 8 years in prison for child abuse. As Eleanor left the courthouse, the spring sunshine warmly embraced her face. It's over, she whispered softly. Justice may be delayed, but it always comes. Martha placed a hand on her shoulder. Grandma. Hearing Noah's voice, Eleanor turned around. Martha's daughter was bringing him up the courthouse steps. Noah ran toward Eleanor, and she embraced her grandson tightly. It's okay now, Noah. It's all over. Daddy won't come anymore. Noah's voice was small, but without the fear it once held. Yes, he'll never hurt us again. 6 months ago, Eleanor became Noah's legal guardian. The initial days were difficult. Noah suffered from nightmares and needed help from a psychologist. However, the resilience of children is remarkable. In a safe and loving environment, Noah gradually regained his smile. Eleanor, won't you come over tonight? Let's have dinner together, Martha suggested. To celebrate our victory. Thank you. But I want to spend tonight at home. There's something I want to talk about with Noah. That evening, as the peaceful surface of Peacock Lake was tinted by the setting sun, Eleanor and Noah sat on the terrace. "Noah, I want to talk to you about your mother," Eleanor quietly began. "About Mommy?" Noah's eyes sparkled. "Yes. I want to tell you all about how brave and kind your mother was, and how much she loved you with such a big heart. I think I've forgotten Mommy's face a little," Noah said, looking embarrassed. "That's okay." Eleanor stood up and brought an album she had prepared. "Look at this. There are many pictures. We'll look at them a little each day." The two turned the pages of the album, sharing memories of Catherine. They laughed, sometimes cried, but those were healing tears. "Grandma," Noah asked in a small voice before sleeping in bed, "we're family, right?" "Yes, Noah," Eleanor kissed her grandson's forehead. "We are family. And family is bound by love and trust." The moonlight danced on the lake's surface visible from the window. There would still be difficulties tomorrow. But Eleanor knew. They were no longer alone. They had each other. And Catherine's memories and love would always be with them. "Good night, Noah." "Good night, Grandma." "I love you." "I love you too, Noah. Always."